Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and brought to you by the generous support of the Tennessee Valley Authority. To learn more about TVA's impact on our community, follow TVA on Instagram at TVA and on Twitter X at TVA News. My Morning Cup, where we have interesting conversations with genuine people. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Dr. Robert Dooley, the Interim Chancellor of the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and the Dean of the Rollins College of Business. Dr. Dooley, before I find out if UTC's Scrappy could take down Oklahoma State's Pistol Pete in a mascot grudge match, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here. Typical work day, first thing is coffee. If I'm traveling somewhere else, it could be, a nice mimosa somewhere with a breakfast and a brunch. So,
and orange juice with a kicker. Huh?
Orange juice with a kicker.
There you go. Well, that's a good way to start today. And so is coffee.
Yeah.
So you're born and raised in Athens?
Yes.
The whole family up there?
Yeah, the whole family was there at the time. It was aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. We all lived in Athens.
Did you live in the city, or was it more of a rural life? Or
I wouldn't call Athens a city, but,
the town.
We lived in the city limits. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. So what did your folks do?
My dad worked for a company called Ledford Machine Tool and Supply out of Cleveland, Tennessee.
Oh yeah.
My uncle had the Ford dealership.
Oh yeah.
In Athens, Tennessee, and at one time my family had Dooley Tractor, which is still there on the old highway going to Nyota. They kept the name, but we're in the tractor business.
What kind of tractors?
Ford tractors.
Ford tractors. So you Ford dealership and Ford tractors.
Yes. Yeah.
Any siblings?
Older brother.
And you said you went to UTC, but before that, what about high school? Any high school jobs?
Yeah. So I went to McMinn County High School. I worked at the Ford dealership. Doing things early on when I was 13, 14 years old. And then when I got my driver's permit, I thought it was great. They would let me run parts and go remove parts at the junkyard for, repairs and that type of stuff. So I worked at the Ford dealership for many years and then went to work for Crescent Hosiery Mill in Nyota, Tennessee during the summer and during the, break months, Christmas, that type of thing.
At the Ford dealer, I grew up in a family business that was materials handling equipment. So similar type thing. Started, sweeping floors at 13, 14. They put you in the parts department and you're having to do inventory. But then you finally get to go on the parts runs and deliver parts. And that's when you got your freedom, huh?
Exactly. That's when I got my freedom and drove an old Bronco with 3 on the column, which was a lot of fun. Very
similar story. I got to tell this. Our delivery van was a 3 on the tree.
Yep.
And I didn't know how to drive it, but I didn't tell the parts manager that. And I learned as I was driving out, and I got a ticket as I was going into a red light, and I didn't want to downshift, so I just decided to run the red light. And about 2 weeks of that, we had a new transmission.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I tore that up. Thankfully, my dad doesn't know that. So I know you were also a big golfer in high school, too.
I played golf in high school, but that was the extent of my golfing career. Didn't play golf in college.
You're still pretty good, though.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed the game. Still enjoy playing. Don't play as much as I used to, but I do enjoy golf.
Was it an idyllic kind of small town life for you?
I think looking back, it was. I can't imagine a better place to grow up, to be honest with you. Having your family that close, which doesn't occur that much anymore. People are too dispersed. Families are too dispersed across the country. So that was great. Every holiday, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, you'd have the big family dinner and gatherings. And it was somewhat idyllic. Yeah, I agree.
Gave you a real sense of place.
It did. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. It was also one of those towns that you couldn't get by with anything, right? Because people knew everybody. So, you'd come home on a Friday night and your parents would stop you at the door and ask you what you'd been doing because somebody'd seen you out, earlier in the evening. So, yeah.
We've talked to a couple people from Athens recently. Bert Robinson, who's with TVA, grew up in Athens, and then everyone knows Daryl Patterson.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I asked Daryl this question because he always says McMinn County.
McMinn County?
Is it McMinn or McMinn?
I say McMinn, but
I think Daryl does it a little bit for just the emphasis on
exactly.
It. So you grew up in McMinn. You decided to go to UTC. Why UTC?
1979, graduated from high school. The choice was go to a state school in Tennessee, right? I had some friends go to Knoxville. I had some friends go to East Tennessee State. But when I visited UTC, there's something about the campus. Had some good friends as well coming here. We ended up being roommates. So that was a deciding factor. Knoxville was just too big, felt too big for me at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Chattanooga was a little closer than East Tennessee State. My father had recently passed away, so I wanted to be a little closer to home. So, and my brother was at school in North Carolina. So that's part of the reason why I chose UTC.
Well, that makes sense. And one thing I didn't mention when you were in high school, but you were also in the band too, huh?
Well, I played in a rock and roll band.
Oh.
Yeah, I never played in the high school band. Yeah.
What'd you play?
I was the drummer.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you still play?
I sold my drum set back in the 90s when I moved to Oklahoma, but I recently bought an electric set. My wife said, I'm not going to listen to you.
So you got the headphones?
I got the headphones, and I started taking lessons again with a really great guy here in Chattanooga. Yeah. As a matter of fact, he and I are going to do DJ for an hour here in a couple of weeks at UTC, and we're going to do the top 10 most underrated drummers for our show. Yeah.
I don't want you to give away the show, but who would be an example of an underrated drummer?
Bonnie Carlos from Cheap Trick.
Oh yeah. I saw Cheap Trick, and they were really good. This was back in the probably 70s.
That's when I saw them. Yeah. They kill it.
Oh, they put on a great show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was when they were at their height too.
Yeah. Great band.
We sound like a couple old guys.
Yeah, we are a couple old guys sitting here.
So you get to UTC. Are you working while you're in school?
The first couple of years I didn't work while I was in school, but went to work for Ira Trivers, was a men's clothing store here in town. Yeah. And worked there the last 2 years in college.
Do you know who else worked at Trevor's? Roy Vaughn.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's why he's such a natty dresser.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Trevor's is where I met my wife, actually.
Is it really?
Yeah, she was working there.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So what are you majoring in at UTC?
I majored in philosophy and religion.
All right. I'm going to jump ahead and kind of ask this question, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. You're the dean of the business school. Mm-hmm. How do you get from philosophy and religion to the business school?
Yeah, no straight path, that's for sure. When I graduated in 1983, that was a recession, right?
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, it was pretty bad recession, actually. So there weren't many jobs available, particularly not for philosophy and religion majors.
Yeah.
So I went back to work for the hosiery mill that I'd worked at all through college and some in high school in the summers, whatever.
What were you doing in the hosiery mill?
Loading dock for minimum wage.
Yeah.
So
shipping and receiving.
I worked there for about a year and a half trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I also considered going into the military.
Yeah.
So I tried a couple of times to go to the military, was denied both times. And then I met this guy on a golf course, interestingly, who worked for West Vaco, and it talks about the power of networking and mentorship.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, he liked me. So we started talking about careers, and he said, I think you would do really well with West Vaco Corporation. Let me introduce you to some people out of New York City. And they had a national training program. So I got selected to go to New York City with a group of about 15 or 16 other young people from around the U.S. We spent a year up there. And then I transferred back to a plant in Cleveland, Tennessee.
First, what does West Vaco do?
West Vaco was at the time, large integrated pulp and paper, probably a Fortune 200 company.
Yeah.
They merged with Mead at some point in the 90s.
I'm going to go back to the major because you graduate and you got a philosophy and religion degree.
Right.
It's a recession. Did you look back and go, I should have focused on something else, or why did you choose philosophy and religion?
I just found it fascinating.
Yeah.
I took a couple of classes in general ed. I found the topics fascinating. I found the faculty interesting. I found the conversations we had in class interesting. But the question you just asked is the same question my mother asked me on a regular basis: is why you majored in philosophy and religion. So, yeah, but I mean, I'm a big proponent of the liberal arts, even though I'm a business dean. But if you think about what you really learn, the ability to think critically, writing skills, communication skills, it was a perfect undergraduate degree for ultimately what I'm doing now.
Well, and that's kind of what I wanted to touch on, not only what it gives you with those ancillary skills, critical thinking and everything, but so many people we talk to are not doing what they went to college for.
Right.
And it's not absolutely necessary that you do it. Probably the only ones that are accountants and lawyers and doctors, but pretty much, and you brought up the word networking. It's more about your experiences and who you meet.
No, I think that's right. I tell students all the time that, you're going to change jobs. I don't know what the current number is, but you're going to change jobs multiple times. You're going to change careers multiple times in your life.
Yeah.
So, find a first start position at a company that's going to give you great experiences, going to expand your skill set and give you the best opportunity. And if it's not the perfect job, that's fine, right? You can leverage that to go do something else, and you'll eventually land on, I think you'll land on what really excites you and motivates you on a daily basis for work. But I also tell students, work is called work for a reason. It is work. So, if 70% of the time you're happy doing what you're doing, or 60%, you're in a great job. If, it's reversed and only 40% of the time you're happy doing what you're doing, probably time to find something else.
Do you find the current generation, well, let me rephrase that. When you and I were getting out of school, it was pretty much find a good company and establish a career and stay with that company. And you mentioned changing jobs or even careers a couple times. Do you find that's much more common today than it was as we were growing our careers?
I do think changing careers and jobs is much more common today. You're right. I mean, the goal was to go to work for a company, stay with the company, be in the retirement system, grow with the company, and that's not occurring anymore. But it's the companies as well, not providing those opportunities in a lot of ways, and the students who are looking for other opportunities along the way. So there's I don't want to say less loyalty, but it's just the nature of the current job market.
Well, I'll say it. There's less loyalty on both sides. On the company side too, because it's become more of a numbers game.
That's right.
Than it ever has been in the past. I want to go back to your naval experience, because we were talking about that earlier. You graduate during a recession, maybe not the most bankable degree in terms of focus and major in terms of for business. So you looked at the Navy. What happened with the Navy?
So I applied to Officers Candidacy School and scored extremely high on the Officers Candidacy test. All indications were I was going to be selected for OCS and go to Quantico. I was about 6 weeks maybe out from what I was thinking would be shipped to Quantico, and then ultimately be on a ship for a period of time. And I don't know if it's still the case, but they had 3 classifications. They had qualified, not best qualified, and not qualified. Mine came back not best qualified. And so in talking to the Navy, the decision was made, well, as a philosophy major, we're not in wartime. We don't need mass deployments for military service. If you're a math major or an engineering major, you would have been great, but you're a philosophy major. Do you want to go to chaplain school, and we'll commission you as a chaplain? And I'm like, I don't think I really want to do that. So
you mean there was a chance we'd have a chaplain Dooley?
Yes.
Your life would have been a little different.
It would have been a lot different.
So that wasn't a realistic option for you.
No.
Where did it take you from there?
So West Vaco. So that opportunity occurred. And
that was through a golf buddy.
That was through a golf buddy. Yeah, literally a guy that I met playing golf.
Somebody you were paired with, or somebody?
Yeah, somebody I was paired with. He was the general manager of the plant in Cleveland, Tennessee. They had two plants in Cleveland. They had a box plant, which I worked for, and they had a rotogravure plant that made large run cigarette cartons, pamper boxes, those type of things. But yeah, it was just a chance meeting. We struck up a conversation, played a little golf together. He introduced me to some people out of the New York office for this national recruiting program, and yeah, that's how it happened.
So you never know where you're going to make a connection.
No. I tell students all the time, if anybody offers you a business card, or if anybody offers to have a cup of coffee, or someone says, reach out to me, let me see if I can help, take them up on it, because you have no idea where that's going to lead.
That's such an important point, because I think a lot of times people hear that and they go, they're just being nice.
No, I think people that say that, they're serious. They want to engage.
Well, and I agree with you on that. That someone in that position, particularly for reaching out to a younger person, if someone in that position, like a general manager or anyone like that, reaches out to you, they're doing it because they see something in you.
That's right.
Yeah, they're not just being nice.
That's right. I agree.
Yeah, they didn't get where they are being nice. you're at Westvaco. Gosh.
Yeah. West Virginia Pulp and Paper.
Is that what it is?
That's what it was originally, and then they shortened the name to Westvaco.
How long were you in New York?
Just a little under a year.
Under a year? And you came back to where, Cleveland?
Came back to Cleveland, Tennessee for that plant, but lived in Dalton and worked North Georgia and Atlanta.
What were you doing?
Sales. Yeah.
So who would you call on manufacturing plants?
At the time, quite a few of the yarn mills were still using large boxes. Mm-hmm. Then they went to trays and shrink wrapped. Large corporate accounts like, what was the name of that company? American Home Products in Atlanta that makes Black Flag and Woolite, large accounts like that. Did some internal sales. Westvaco also owned U.S. Envelope. They bought a lot of boxes. So that was kind of an internal, but yeah, various industries, like chicken processing plants.
Oh, that's fun. I had the pleasure when I was right out of school selling forklifts of going through a meat packing plant.
Yeah.
I may be a vegetarian.
Exactly.
Yeah. How long were you with them?
I think I was with Westvaco about 6 or 7 years. And then I had a short period of time where I went to another company called Jefferson Smurfit. Mm-hmm. They had Container Corporation of America, had a plant here in Chattanooga and worked for them for a short period of time.
Doing the same thing, sales?
Same thing, yep.
What got you back into academia?
I started my MBA part-time while working for Westvaco.
At UTC?
At UTC. So I would sit in these meetings and they would talk about P&L and margin and philosophy major. I had no idea what they were talking about. I'm like, oh yeah, right, but maybe I needed a little business experience. So went back to work on my MBA with Westvaco. Had a faculty member, second kind of mentoring story, who I wrote a paper with that we ultimately published. And he said, I think you'd make a pretty good academic. Have you ever considered it? I'm like, no, never even thought about it. But that's what kind of pushed me towards the path towards higher ed. Finally convinced my wife to let me stop work and go back to school full time for my doctorate.
Wow. So you quit working completely and went and got your doctorate.
Yes.
That's nice support at home too.
Nice support. Yeah, very good.
Yeah. So you're in the meetings hearing about P&Ls and things like that, and you do the paper with the professor, and he says you might have a future in academia. Why is there a conflict between the business world and the academic world, and how did you cross that divide?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, and it's true. I can remember sitting in some of my early seminar classes in the PhD program, and I would bring up examples from Westvaco Corporation. Mm-hmm. So we'd be talking about some topic, and I'd bring it up, and I would be very quickly told that's not relevant. And then the reason I'd be told it's not relevant is because you're talking about a statistical number of one. That happened at that one company at that one point in time. And in higher ed, at least in my degree program, and I think in most research degree programs, what they're really teaching to do is understand theory, drive broader research that's more broadly applicable. So Westvaco was a sample of one. Sample of one is not statistically generalizable to any other company, right? So if you want to talk about that question in a broader framework, looking at companies throughout the pulp and paper industry and do a comprehensive study that's driven by theory, okay, we'll have that conversation. So I think that sometimes creates the disconnect. Yeah. Is a little bit of a misunderstanding of what a PhD program actually trains somebody to do.
Well, it's interesting you put it that way because I think the immediate response from someone in a business position would be, yeah, but that's real life.
It's true.
Yeah.
And I guess the longer I've been in higher ed, the more I've gravitated back towards working with individual companies. I did that quite a bit at Oklahoma State through executive education and consulting, to where I could take what I learned from a theoretical standpoint or from a research standpoint and then take those topics and those issues and then take them back to a company and N of one and apply that. Yeah. So, but I found that very rewarding.
But I could see the difference in the philosophy on the academic side, saying, that's not really that's an instance of one, and we're looking more overall, and the business is looking, but that's real world. That's our instance of one.
Yeah. So But you can help that company with the instance of one by knowing what you know more generalizable, because you can bring it to them and say, okay, this is what we know happens in general across companies that face these situations, or this is what theory would tell us is going to happen. So there is a disconnect, but it's very applicable. A lot of academics just never make the decision to translate what they're doing on the research side back to industry, right? They stay in the world of higher ed. As a business school dean, I'm a very big proponent of actually, getting involved in practice as a faculty member. So we have a lot of faculty that are involved in consulting, strategic planning, HR management that work directly with companies because they're taking what they learned and applying it back to a business and helping the businesses. And
we're going to get in more detail about the business school, but it seems like UTC overall, with your influence, because you've had a foot in both camps.
Right.
That's a great, it seems UTC's business program has a great relationship with the business community and that practical side of it.
I think so. I mean, we've focused very heavily on community engagement over the past decade, both in terms of connecting the business community to our students, but also connecting our faculty back out to the business community. So, yeah, I mean, a business degree is a professional degree program, right? So there is a large practical application side to it.
You got your MBA at UTC, and did that kind of start to give you the bug for academics?
It
through
did.
Your MBA, or
it did. The research I did with that professor for his class gave me the bug for academics.
And then you go and get your PhD at UTK?
At UTK, I did. Graduated in December. I think it was December of '95 is when I officially finished, and then went to work for Oklahoma State in the summer of '96.
How did that come about? How do you go from getting your PhD at UTK and then jumping right into academics? And I'm assuming that's what you decided you wanted to do at that point, as opposed to go back into the business world.
Yes, I did. I wanted to go into higher ed, and I wanted to find an institution that had doctoral programs because I'd just come out of a doctoral program. I wanted to be involved in that. I wanted to go to a Research One school if at all possible.
What's a Research One school?
That's a school that has comprehensive doctoral programs across the curriculum. So Knoxville's a Research One. And the reason for that is there's, an R1 school gives you more latitude in your career on where you might go next. And so I interviewed a lot of different places, Oklahoma State. I can remember going to Oklahoma State, calling my wife from the hotel there on campus. And I said, if they offer me the job, I'm going to take it. I love the town. It was college town. And I can remember, she won't care what I say this, but when we went out to look for a house in February, it was bleak and gray and flat and brown. And I looked over and she was crying. Well, I'm like, okay, well, this may be a short-lived career at Oklahoma State, right? But interestingly, she loved it as well. So what she tells everybody, she cried when she moved there and she cried when she left. So
that says a lot.
Yeah.
And that's another interesting thing. And interesting thing of not just the towns and the places, but again, kind of back because we're similar age, how we grew up, you went to where the job was.
Yes.
And today, because of remote work and things like that, you could choose where you live and work for basically anyone. But you went to places that today, in terms of, well, I don't know if I'd go to Detroit. I don't know if I'd go to.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
I do hear a lot of students say that. They say, you got an opportunity and somewhere, and they're like, I'm not really sure I want to move there.
Yeah.
And I was very much of the mindset, it's the job first, location secondary, because if you take the job that gives you the best opportunity for advancement and growth, then other opportunities are going to follow. So I agree. It was go where the job is.
Yeah, but it was almost like you had to do your time in certain places to get the next opportunity. It was almost a proving ground.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. And today, everyone's got a lot more options in that. And I think that's what benefits Chattanooga so much.
I agree. It's what's really brought in an influx of tremendous, people into Chattanooga. They can live here and work anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Live, work, and play.
Exactly.
That's what we preach.
Yeah, that's good.
So you're out at Oklahoma State. What are you doing?
Faculty member on the business in the Spear School of Business, just traditional faculty member up through the ranks, assistant professor, associate professor, promoted up. Had a friend who stepped in as interim dean and asked me to serve as MBA director. So I did that for a period of time and then was asked to serve as Associate Dean for Graduate Programs and Research in the school. So I did that for the last part of my career at Oklahoma State before coming back here.
How long were you out there? 14 years, did you say?
15 years.
15 years?
Yeah.
And I just thought of this. Oklahoma State, wasn't T. Boone Pickens a huge backer?
Big backer, yeah. Transformed that entire campus.
Oh, I couldn't imagine. And what were you teaching when you were teaching?
Mostly strategic management and some decision-making courses. So
you're out there 14 years. Your wife falls in love with the place. Mm-hmm. What's the call back home?
There's a gentleman that was here in town, Bob Farnsworth. I don't know if you remember.
I remember Bob. Yeah, he worked Chatham.
No, he's CEO of Playcorps.
Playcorps. I'm sorry.
He was an Oklahoma State grad. So I got to know Bob fairly well over the years. He would come out for football games, and we'd meet up and have dinner or go to a game together. And I remember in the fall of probably 2010, he was on the Dean's Advisory Board here at UTC, in the college, and he said they're going to have a Dean's opening at UTC in the College of Business. You should apply for it. And so that's when I learned about the position. It wasn't as easy a decision of, it's an opportunity to go back home. I had to establish a career at Oklahoma State. I actually thought I would end my career at Oklahoma State. We had both decided this was a place that we could stay and end our career and retire actually in Oklahoma. But the more I thought about the opportunity to come home, my alma mater, decided to, apply, and, here I am. So.
And that was in 2010?
Applied in early in 2011, probably applied sometime in January or February 2011 and started in July.
And back to Bob Farnsworth telling you about that opening, that goes back to networking and people you meet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Seems to be a common thread for you.
I can literally say most of the opportunities that have come my way have come from people I've met, become friends with, or have connected me. I just can't emphasize enough, especially to young people today, the importance of networking and building those relationships.
Yeah. So it's 2010 and you're coming back, and Chattanooga's had some success. I mean, what was because you grew up in Athens, and it's not like you were in Chattanooga every weekend, but you probably, as a kid growing up, were down here a bit and you knew a bit about the town. What was the difference from when you were growing up to when you decided to come back?
Just a complete transformation. Was aware a little bit of it. We would come back in the summer for a vacation to visit family, and at that time it was before the aquariums were built, but they had just started Riverbend, and so that was exciting. And then we see the aquariums getting built and the transformation of downtown. But the difference between coming back in 2011 and when I was here in the late 70s, early 80s, is in the late 70s, early 80s, Chattanooga was still somewhat of a dirty industrial town, right? So downtown sidewalks would roll up at 5 o'clock. There was nothing to do, nowhere to go. Campus was kind of an island in the middle of all that. Compared to 2011 and even today, it's just a thriving mid-sized city that just got so much to offer.
Yeah, and you brought up something that I don't think a lot of people realize today, how UTC really was this island and really wasn't connected with the city.
Not at all. But it was, I would say at that time, it was probably a two-way street in some ways. There was nothing to connect to.
Right.
So you had the university there that was a good university, but the city itself, there was nothing to connect to.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it was Bill Stacy or which chancellor it was. And it's a common thing, but you can't be a great city unless you have a great university.
I would agree with that.
And I think it was part of Mayor Corker's, then Mayor Corker's riverfront plan to really connect UTC in a more physical way to downtown.
Yeah, I agree. And the campus itself, compared to the 70s, 80s, and today, has completely been transformed in terms of growth, enrollment numbers, programs. For example, right now we have about $460 million of capital projects underway on campus.
What kind of projects? Housing? Or
we've got housing, the new business building, new health sciences nursing building, planning a new dining hall, renovation of several existing facilities. Yeah.
I moved here in 2000, and UTC at that point was not a commuter school, but didn't have a lot of on-campus life. And now now you go onto the campus, and you would know you're in Chattanooga. And what I mean by that, you could be, any attractive campus in the country.
Yeah, it's when I was here in the late 70s, early 80s, it was a commuter campus. There probably maybe 400 students living on campus, 450 students, something like that. Now we have close to 4,000 students on campus.
Just living on campus?
Just living on campus.
How many total students?
11,600, something like that.
It's a good-sized school.
Yeah.
And they're NIT champions.
Which was a lot of fun. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. We weren't gonna miss that one.
Good, yeah, that's great.
So you start in 2010 as the dean of the business school.
2011.
I'm sorry, 2011. Go through showing up what some of your goals were and some of the changes you wanted to affect.
Yeah, it was interesting. So, I mean, two different schools in terms of Oklahoma State, R1, mostly focused on research, not a lot of undergraduate teaching. When I was at Oklahoma State, I didn't teach undergraduates very often, mostly graduate students. Mm-hmm. Here, more of a teaching-focused school, doing good research, but it's more applied, less theoretical. So that transition was, for me, it took a while, right, to kind of reorient myself. So here, my first focus was on student success. So how do we provide the resources and the support to our students to be successful academically and in their careers? And so one of the first initiatives we undertook was building out the Cosmo Student Success Center. And that was to provide high-level professional advising to our students and to stand up a career center in the college as well that would create those internship connections and permanent employment, as well as give students practical skills and resume writing, interviewing, that type of thing.
So the students have a place to go to not only get advice on their resumes and connections and things like that, but to make that connection with businesses who are looking for whether it's an internship or a new hire.
Yes, exactly. And couldn't think of a better person to name that center for than Joe DeCosmo.
Oh, yeah.
If you think about the person that has helped so many people in Chattanooga be successful, it was perfect.
Yeah.
And happy birthday to Joe, by the way. He just turned 100.
My goodness.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of DeCosmos around too.
Yes.
Just go to Rotary. You'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll see every one of them. So that's the first step. But I know a big linchpin for all that was the naming of the college for the Rollins College of Business. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So interesting story on how I met Mr. Rollins. It was probably fall of 2011, so I'd been here maybe 4 or 5 months. I get a call from the Rollins Foundation in Atlanta. They said, we issued a $20,000 check about a year ago, and it's never been cashed. Like, okay, so
for the College of Business.
For the College of Business, just an unrestricted donation. So we try to track it down. Who knows, right? So, so I send the foundation a note, say I apologize. I'm the new dean. Then I look up Mr. Rollins, who is Mr. Rollins, who is his foundation, and I sent him a letter and said, hey, I'm the new dean. I'd like to come introduce myself.
Can you give a thumbnail on Mr. Rollins?
Sure. Super gracious, humble individual. Very generous, not just to us, but in Atlanta. I mean, he's involved so much in helping so many people, from veterans to the Atlanta Zoo. It's just incredible. I would say he's also a very practical person. Mm-hmm. I would say he still believes in, it's somewhat doing business on a handshake, like you do what you say you're going to do and you follow through, right?
And what was his business?
Orkin Pest Control.
Orkin Pest Control. And what's his connection to UTC?
Graduated from here in 1967.
See, probably a lot of people don't realize that guy who started Orkin Pest Control is a UTC grad.
Well, his dad started it. There's a very famous Harvard case about Orkin Pest Control. His dad's company, it was the first leveraged buyout in history.
Really?
Was his dad's company purchasing Orkin. And so there's a famous Harvard case about that whole transaction.
I bet that is. So you've got the challenge of running down a $20,000 check that the Rollins were very generous to the school, and no one cashed for a year.
Right. Yeah, that's how I met him.
So what? I got to know, what happened to the check?
We never found it, but the foundation reissued the check.
Did they really?
Yeah, they reissued the check.
So that establishes your relationship. And I'm just looking at this from a third-party perspective. You're the new dean. He's a graduate of the school. They're being very, very generous. And that could go one of two ways, quite frankly. My God, we issued a check and they can't even cash a $20,000 check. Or, we've got a new dean who's hunted this down and you've established a relationship with him. That had to give you a little bonding there, didn't it?
It certainly created a starting point for a conversation. So, yeah, I mean, and it's just someone that over time I would go visit with, try to visit with him a couple of times a year. Very busy being CEO and chairman of the company, but we try to go visit with him a couple of times a year and talk to him about the future of the college and how he might get involved. And he supported the Success Center early on. And again, I think that was a little bit of proof of concept. Here's what we're talking about doing. Here's what we want to accomplish. And then being able to implement that, put those things in place, and then go back and say, okay, this is what we've done. Building confidence in terms of delivering on what you say you're going to deliver on.
Showing them the results. Yeah. How important were those early years of sales for you in doing stuff like that at the business school, being able to?
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of sales.
Yeah.
In fact, when Mr. Rollins gave the gift, there was only one academic program that we stood up with that gift, and it was a professional sales program. And it's probably one of our fastest growing majors in the college. We offer a sales curriculum for non-business majors, but I feel like everybody ought to be exposed. Every student should be exposed to sales at some point in their college career.
Well, frankly, everyone's in sales.
Yeah.
It's what you do every day. It's the
selling yourself, yeah, exactly.
Why do you suppose sales got a bad rap? Because I was a sales guy my whole life.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's good question. Professional salesmen and women are, if you look in terms, the students are always surprised when we talk about the earning potential as a professional salesperson, right? Like it's pretty significant.
Oh, it could be unlimited depending on what the commission plan is.
Exactly. So who knows why?
Because I think particularly when students who are younger initially hear sales, it's almost, ooh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to sully myself.
And maybe it's just a self-consciousness or maybe being anxious about engaging with somebody like that. I mean, one of the things that we've stood up in the college is a sales institute, and we have labs where students get to practice sales, right? So not unlike this room here, but we would have cameras in each of the corners and a camera over the top of the table, and we bring in our industry partners, and the students do mock sales presentations.
Wow.
And then we can videotape them and give them annotated feedback. And of the presentation on you did this, you did that, you were tapping your foot, you were, whatever the case may be, or this was an opportunity for you to ask for the sale, but you let it slip or you didn't follow through. So, we're giving them real hands-on skills and experiences.
I didn't realize you had that. So that's for the students. Do you ever offer that out to other businesses in terms of sales training?
No, but we could.
Yeah.
But we have not. No. But it's a pretty sophisticated system.
Yeah, because most people kind of fall into sales because not a lot of schools have a sales major or a sales track or background. So you kind of fall into sales.
Right.
And it's not that you're self-taught, but you pick up a lot of things along the way.
Yeah, I agree.
Was that in existence before you got to
the sales program?
The sales program?
No. We established the sales program with part of the Rollins gift.
Did the entrepreneur focus also come with that?
We had an entrepreneurship program in place that Dr. Rich Beecher had built up a really strong program, always been a strong program in the college. So that wasn't a focus of the Rollins gift. Was not.
It was not?
No, but I will say, it was in the newspaper last week. We're really proud to have named the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship after Max Fuller.
Really?
So he gave us a naming gift.
I saw that.
He gave us a naming gift. So incredible.
And I'm thinking of myself, and I don't know a ton about UTC, but I know enough, having been here 20 plus years. It seems to me that the school has really embraced the business side of academics. I mean, and what I mean by that, the business program. It seems to be a school that's on a growth path for attracting business students. Would that be true?
That is true. We've grown. Part of the reason for the expansion of the business building is we've reached the limits of our ability to grow in our current facilities. So that's what's driving this new expansion. But we have grown pretty substantially, both in terms of program offerings as well as student enrollment. How
important is the local business community to help not prop that up, but be a support system for it?
We can't adequately prepare our students for careers without the support of the business community, whether it's providing those internships, whether bringing people in to work with our students on advisory board, helping keep our curriculum up to date. Business communities critical to the success of the College of Business.
What would you tell a business who might be listening to this that either the school hadn't reached out to them or they hadn't reached out to you? How could they get involved?
So they're happy to email me, contact me. That's fine, and I'll connect them with the people in the college. But we would love to have companies get involved. I mean, we've got just such exceptional students. I mean, just great opportunities for companies to identify some really top talent to help their companies. So we'd love to have them get involved in a number of ways, right? Whether it's working with our resume workshops, doing mock interviews, providing internships, speaking to classes. Every once in a while, we even have some folks from the business community come in and teach for us, teach a class, which is great, bringing that real world skill set into the classroom. So,
and I would think the business community would love doing that too.
Yes,
there's nothing like sharing what you've learned.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Chattanooga's done obviously a transformation, since you grew up here and even since I moved here. But one of the things that's kind of fascinated me over the last decade and a half is really the focus on entrepreneurism within the community itself. Whether it was the Brickyard guys, whether it's bellhops, do you interact with that, and how does that build upon UTC's business program in terms of Chattanooga being an attractive entrepreneur place, and how do you piggyback on that?
Yeah, we do build on that. So our Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and Dr. Tom Lyons, who is the endowed chair of entrepreneurship, and then Mike Bradshaw, that was the former director of CoLab, is our center director. So. And Mike's got great connections in the city. But we do build on that. We provide internships for our students with entrepreneurial startup companies and with CoLab. Oftentimes, those companies don't have the resources to pay for an internship, so the programs we've developed, we pay the internship for the company. So we've got students actually engaged with startups in Chattanooga.
Oh, that's great.
Helping with startups. So that's great. We focus quite a bit on what I would say underserved areas. For example, our Veterans Entrepreneurship Program. How do we help veterans create sustainable businesses? We've got a program we started 3 years ago called the Urban Vision Initiative, which works with entrepreneurs in Chattanooga City proper, helping them develop businesses and grow their businesses. Our students engage with those entrepreneurs as consultants, so we have student consultants that work with those folks. So we engage in a number of levels. We don't engage as much with what I would say the high-tech startups. We're connected to them, but we've got people like what's going on, with you mentioned it a minute ago. Brickyard, yeah. Right? Like we engage with them, but in some ways we're of less assistance to them, I would say, than with nascent startups, right? Yeah,
and what I've learned about Brickyard is they kind of like to have that insulated, separate.
Yes.
Their total focus is that growing those companies.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's very insular.
And we another program we started a couple of years ago in connection with Chattanooga STEM schools called Inventanooga, where we bring grammar school, junior high, and high school kids to campus around pitch competitions in December.
Well, they got to love that.
They love that. It's a great way for us to connect and again kind of fuel that entrepreneurial spirit in young people and give them an opportunity to come and pitch business ideas.
Yeah, and do you find that kind of prevalent attitude within the city obviously affects the university too? Oh, absolutely. And it attracts people here.
Our entrepreneurship program, we've been very focused on extending it out across campus. So entrepreneurship's not for business students, it's for any student. We provide entrepreneurship curriculum all across the campus. We provide support to faculty who have research ideas or research that has the potential to be commercializable, and how do we do a transfer to make what they're working on something that may be a viable product or service. So we're engaged in a lot of different ways.
You've taken the business school and grown it and focused on the things that are how the world is changing, but you've also got a new title.
Yes.
Talk about being interim
Chancellor?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe you missed the meeting and they just appointed you, huh?
Kind of. There's some truth to that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah, there's a little bit of truth to that. So I was in South Korea on my way to China when I received a text message that said, former Chancellor Langle has made the decision to retire and step back and return to faculty. And it was surprising, but I understand. And while I was in China, President Boy was trying to get a hold of me, and I had taken a different phone to China than my personal phone. So I had a different phone over there, so he didn't have my number. So he was trying to get a hold of me, couldn't get a hold of me, So I get back from China on a Sunday. My phone rings Monday morning. It's President Boyd. He said, I would be interested in you serving as interim chancellor, and I need to know by tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
So it kind of happened that way.
Yeah.
So
you missed the meeting. They voted, and you were it.
And I was it. So that was, I'm flattered. I'm honored to do it. I've learned a lot. I've got a great appreciation now for other parts of campus that I didn't understand as well, being business dean, and just the complexity of the organization.
How different is it?
It's quite a bit different. I'd say as dean, your focus is on a couple of things. It's on academic programming. It's on students and student success, and then engaging with faculty as they relate to those two topical areas, right? And then community engagement, fundraising, those types of things. The chancellor's job is more comprehensive. So I've learned a lot about athletics in the past 3 or 4 months. I've learned a lot about campus housing in the past 3 or 4 months. I've learned a lot about food services in the last 3 or 4 months.
More than you care to know.
Yeah. So it's really like. In some ways, if you think 11,600 students and another couple of thousand employees, it's like a small city.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
So you're kind of the mayor of UTC.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but we've got a good team. We got a great team, but there are a lot of things that are happening simultaneously. Yeah.
Is it more than you thought it would be, or just learning that it's more comprehensive than?
I don't think I had a full appreciation of it before taking the job. So in some ways, it's more than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And just not fully understanding all of the issues that are occurring that you're just not aware of, right? As a dean or as a faculty member or as a student. So
since you've seen, obviously the business side and now the overall campus side, where do you see UTC in the next decade?
Continuing to grow. I think there's going to be an increased emphasis on research that supports the community. We've talked a lot about moving towards R2 status, which is, again, pushing us a little bit more towards research, particularly in areas like quantum, mobility. You've heard the mayor talk about that in the past.
I was going to ask you about the quantum announcement.
Yeah, the quantum announcement. So we're hiring faculty in that area. We're standing up research centers in that area. So I think you're going to see growth in enrollment. Mm-hmm. But you're also going to see a stronger emphasis on certain areas of expertise where we think we can complement where the city's headed and support the city.
So you guys kind of not work hand in hand, but very much with the city and the...
Yes, yeah, we do.
Can you explain for someone like me what the whole quantum computing thing is?
I know it's important.
That's a great, honest answer. God,
I know it's important. I really don't. It's current computing is structured zeros and ones.
Okay.
Right. So everything's in bits, a 0 or 1, and it's a string of zeros and ones that determine what the programming or the code or the outcome is. Right. So the best analogy I can make is quantum does away with zeros and ones, and it can calculate things simultaneously. So it's not linear. It's
kind of
yes. Yeah.
Who thinks of this stuff?
People a lot smarter than me.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And you're a lot smarter than me. So
it's interesting. Yeah. But we've hired some really good people. But it's a fascinating field.
And that's a pretty big deal because we're the only place doing that, right?
Well, I think there are a number of institutions around the country that are focused on quantum. What's interesting about us is we have a full quantum network, which is leveraging EPB's fiber, right? So we have really the only test bed in the country where companies focused on quantum software or quantum hardware can come and actually test their products and services. So that's unique to us. And then if you combine that with Dr. Sartipi's urban informatics lab, where she's looking at mobility, but we have the largest traffic test bed in the country with over 100 sensors around the city monitoring traffic flows, traffic patterns, and which also ties into quantum. Because if you get to the point where you're going to have autonomous vehicles, you're going to have quantum computing if you think about moving to that in order to be able to move traffic. So,
how prescient was EPB's fiber installation?
Yeah, I'm telling you, you talk about foresight and vision. Harold the Priest and all those folks there, and David Wade. There was, just incredible vision to take advantage of that at the time and lay that network. Incredible vision.
Because I remember it, and it was during a downtime. It was the 2007-08 Great Recession, and a lot of people were scratching their heads, going, "Why are they spending all this money on this?" Yeah,
it's we've had. A finance faculty member, Dr. Lobo, has done some economic impact studies. He did one early on, and then he did one more recently looking at a decade and the economic impact for this region in terms of driving entrepreneurship, new businesses coming to town, the ability to leverage remote work because you got the high-speed fiber. Just incredible.
Yeah, it's almost our modern equivalent of the aquarium.
Yes.
It changed the whole narrative.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, before I get to my last question, Robert, I do want to remind our listeners who makes all this possible, and it's a thank you to the Tennessee Valley Authority for sponsoring My Morning Cup. You can follow TVA on social media to learn more about its multifaceted mission of service, and visit TVA.com/do good here to explore exciting TVA career opportunities. I've really enjoyed this conversation, but I do have one last question for you, and it's my standard last question. What would you tell that 25-year-old Robert Dooley is important for a happy life?
I think I've always taken the position, never say no, right? So, and I'll share that with students sometimes, and they look at me and they say, "What are you talking about?" I'm just like, just don't say no to new opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So my life philosophy and still to this day is if there are interesting opportunities that come along, I usually try to take advantage of them and participate in some way. And it's just too easy to sit back and say I'm comfortable where I am and not push yourself. The interim chancellor position is very similar, right? It was an opportunity at my stage in the career. Is it something I was pursuing? No. Is it something I'm pursuing now? No. But from a personal growth perspective and from an experience perspective, just a tremendous opportunity. How do you say no to that, right? So I think that's, for me, that's been what's been made for a happy life, is continuing to pursue new experiences and new opportunities and continue to expand the network and relationships that come along with experiences like that, right?
Yeah.
So,
and that's great advice, because to your point, if you had said no to Randy Boyd, it's not that your eyes wouldn't have been open, but you wouldn't have experienced the things beyond the business school.
Exactly. And just in terms of the relationships I've built over the past several months with people at the UT system that I never would have had the opportunity to interact with. Right.
Yeah.
And so now another set of network and another set of connections and another set of relationships. So,
and who knows, you might have an opportunity to not say no.
I'm getting closer to where I can see retirement at some point in the future, but even at that point, it won't be retirement. It'll be retiring to something else, probably. So
yeah, you'll find something else to keep yourself busy. Yeah. I can imagine. I really appreciate you coming in and doing this. I really love catching up with you, and
it's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.